going to bring up my favorite state senator, Kate Brophy-McGee, to introduce our program for the day.
So, fellow Rotarians, this is my 9th year in the legislature, and in 2015 and 16, the last 2 years, I served on the Transportation and Technology Committee under Chairman Bob Worsley, Senator Bob Worsley, who was doing an epic policy work in his role as transportation chair. And it was the most fascinating committee I have ever served on, most interesting committee. Part of that involved driverless technologies coming to Arizona. And what is interesting is, from the legislative viewpoint, what didn't happen. What didn't happen was established interests coming in and passing preemptive regulatory blocks to these new, young, high-tech companies coming to Arizona, which is a perfect place for driverless technologies to develop. And so that was done in concert with Chairman Worsley, Senator Worsley, and Governor Ducey. And so today, I get to introduce Waymo. Dezbah Hatathli serves as Waymo's local policy and community manager for the state of Arizona. She leads the Waymo policy team that plays a key role in bringing life-saving autonomous vehicle technology to the everyday lives of Arizona residents. Dezbah joined Waymo, formerly the Google self-driving car project, when it began testing on public roads in Arizona in 2016. And well, I remember that day. Dezbah grew up on the Navajo reservation here in Arizona, and her father worked there as a teacher. She graduated from Dartmouth College with a degree in anthropology and returned to Arizona, where she worked as an archaeologist for the Navajo Nation. But then she transitioned into public safety, first as a crime scene specialist, and then as a police, fire, EMS dispatcher in the Phoenix metro area, and from there to Waymo. She is committed to bringing driverless car technology to all Arizonas because she believes it will reduce accidents and save lives, and she has a personal story to tell about that. Would you please join me in giving a warm Rotary welcome to Dezbah Hatathli.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much, Phoenix Rotary Club, and for John, for Senator Brophy-McGee, for giving me that warm introduction. Thank you very much. As Senator Brophy-McGee said, my name is Dezbah Hatathli. I'm originally from the Navajo Nation. My father was from Chinle, Arizona, and my mother was from Two Gray Hills, New Mexico. So I grew up on the Navajo reservation, went to school at Dartmouth, and I've been committed to the work that we do at Waymo personally because, number one, I have an 8-year-old son named Brody, and the thought of him driving and being behind the wheel with a lot of these distracted drivers that we have on the road is a little alarming, so I'm really hoping that he never has to get a driver's license and has to drive himself around. But more importantly, I lost my mother at the age I am right now, at 48, to an accident that could have been prevented. So that is kind of my personal reason for doing what I do with Waymo today. I have a couple of drivers here with me today, Martin and Aaron. They're right in the middle. They'll also be on hand to answer any questions that anybody might have. But what you'll find at Waymo is a lot of us are committed to safety. With my public safety background, I've been to a lot of crime scenes, I've been to a lot of car accidents, and I've also been the first point of contact for a lot of people who would call into 911 here in the Valley. And it was just really alarming to have to respond to these types of calls and in the end find out that a lot of these accidents could have been easily prevented. So when we look and we give these kinds of presentations, you'll find that a lot of members of the team have personal stories of their own that they'd like to share, and they are also very much bought into why we're doing what we're doing today on the roads. So again, thank you. So what is Waymo? Who is Waymo? Like was said in the introduction, we are a self-driving car technology, and we're committed to providing safe a safe way to get around both humans, both people who need to be transported, but then also to things. So we're not just thinking personal transportation needs, we're also thinking on a larger scale in terms of trucking. How can we be on the roadways and make them and contribute to making them safer on the roads today? So here's just a quick fact. 94% of the accidents that occur on the freeways today are the result of human error. So when we're looking and thinking about car accidents that have occurred on the nation's roadways, what we find is a lot of the times it's the human driver behind the wheel who is actually at fault. We're talking about distracted driving, people texting, people who are under the influence, maybe being really tired, being on the road for long stretches or of miles on the road. So these are things that could be easily preventable if we're able to kind of remove the driver from the vehicle, and that's kind of what our goal is with Waymo. So 94% of that. So if we're looking at reducing the amount of human error that occur on the roadways today, this is pretty significant. What we're really talking about is about 37,000 fatalities that occur on the driveways or on the roadways each year. That's a pretty high number. I think one of our team members likes to equate us saying that's equivalent to having a 747 drop out of the sky every day. So it's a pretty big number. So when we're talking about self-driving technology, what does that mean? What are we wanting to give back to the people other than roadway safety? One thing that we're looking at is the actual giving back of, number one, safety. We're going to reduce the number of accidents that occur on the roadways, but we're also looking at giving time back to the drivers. You think about your long commutes here in the East Valley or in the Phoenix Valley in general, you're talking at minimum maybe a 30 or 40-minute car drive to get to work or get wherever you need to go in the valley. What could you be doing with that time if you were in the car? We like to ask that question of a lot of people that we go to speak with, and a lot of times the number one answer is to take a nap. A lot of us would love to be able to do that. Other answers that we've had are, people would like to interact with their children more when they're in the vehicles. I have an 8-year-old who really loves to take up my time and want to engage when I'm driving, but I would have to always tell him just to wait. Mom's driving. I have to concentrate on what I'm doing on the roadways. So you could think about that, little bits of time that you could actually pay attention, maybe read a story with your child. Things like that are really important, and we would love to be able to give that back to you as one of our users. The third thing that we're looking at giving back to the people who ride in our vehicles is mobility. You think about all the people that are out on the roadways today. There's a lot of people like myself who are getting up in age where it might not be easy to get around. We have people who have accessibility needs, for instance. People who might not actually want to be behind the vehicle. We have a person who's participating in our program who witnessed a fatal car accident at a very early age, and from that point in time, she decided that she did not want to have that responsibility of driving. So we want to make sure that this technology is available and accessible to everybody, to give them that freedom and independence where you don't have to necessarily count on a family member to get you around. You can actually use the service to get you where you need to go. So this is a picture of our fleet, the history of our fleet. Our journey began in 2016 here in the Phoenix area, but we've actually existed as the Google Self-Driving Car Project since 2009. So we're coming up on 10 years of existing as a self-driving car technology company. From that time, we've gone through a couple of different vehicle platforms. If you look at the illustration here, the first vehicle that we actually used was the Toyota Prius. And what we did was actually go to the car lot, pull it off the car, and then just add all of our self-driving car systems on the vehicle, just to see if it would work. From that point, we also decided in 2015 to build the prototype, which is the vehicle that you're going to see on the far right. That was actually built in-house by our Google engineers at the time, just to see if we would be able to create and come up with a self-driving car from the ground up. This is a very good experiment in terms of what kind of comfort needs would we need as a passenger in the car. But one clear lesson that we learned from this experiment is the fact that Google engineers do not know anything about car making. The vehicle, due to regulations at the time, our vehicle could only go up to 25 miles an hour. It had no steering wheel, no pedals. And interesting enough, in this vehicle, it had seat heaters but no air conditioning. So this is one of the main reasons why we didn't bring it to the Phoenix area. So from that point, Google really switched its way of thinking. How do we want to be able to provide this technology to a whole range of vehicle platforms? So with that, we went to the Lexus SUVs, which were the first vehicles that we brought out here to the Phoenix area. And then we also got the Chrysler Pacificas. So what we're really looking at is developing a robust self-driving car platform that we can apply and put onto different types of vehicles that are out there today. In 2020, we are going to be bringing the Jaguar I-Pace, which is a smaller SUV crossover vehicle. And what we want to do is, as we're increasing the numbers of cars that we're going to have on the road that are self-driving, we also want to minimize the impact that we're going to have to the environment itself. So the Jaguar I-Pace are actually going to be 100% fully electric vehicles. We signed an agreement with Jaguar Land Rover for 20,000 of them. So starting next year, in the Phoenix area, we are going to be adding these to our existing Chrysler Pacifica fleets. Okay, when I'm talking about driving and self-driving car technology, what exactly am I talking about? There's actually 5 different levels of automation that exist currently. If anyone here owns a Tesla, you probably have a level 2 or a level 3 driver assist technology platform built into your vehicle at this time. Waymo is operating at a high level 4 level of autonomy, which means basically that at any point in time, we do not expect our drivers to have to take over control of the vehicle. This means that the vehicle is doing all the learning and all the thinking on its own and can operate in full autonomous mode without having the need to rely on somebody taking over at the wheel. So if you have a Tesla, you have maybe your lane line collision avoidance markings or alerts that go off. That would be considered a level 3 level of autonomy. Now, why are we looking at this? So in this particular video, this is a video compiled of our Google employees that had the opportunity to ride in our vehicles. Now, at the time this video was taken, it was early 2012, and back then our self-driving car systems were basically operating at a level 3 level of autonomy. So in this illustration, if it wants to play here, what we see is the car is actually in cruise mode on a freeway. We see the posted speed limit of 57 miles per hour. And what do we see the guy doing in the car? He's sitting there texting on his phone. And at this point, all the Google employees were told that they had to be able to take control over the car at any point in time. So they were all trained, all directed that they needed to take control of the car. Well, this clearly illustrates that this person here is cruising at almost 60 miles per hour, and he's in no position to take over the car if need be. So this was really alarming and alerting to us as a company, because what we realized is that the technology in 2012 was so good at the time that our employees were very comfortable with being in the car. And it still put a lot of responsibility on our drivers at the time, but we really needed to switch gears in how we might want to respond to that. We realized that with this type of technology, we still do run the risk of having a human make a bad call or not be attentive enough to take over control of the wheel. So we really switched gears in terms of wanting to develop a more fully autonomous vehicle so we wouldn't really need to rely on human intervention. This video is streaming really slow. I'm really sorry about that. But we do see the guy behind the wheel who's too busy playing with his phone. Later on in the illustration, we actually see a lady putting makeup on behind the wheel. And at the very end of the video, we actually have an individual who's fully asleep at the wheel. So this is why we decided to change the way we're doing things. So since 2009, we've actually driven over 10 million miles of self-driving cruising on public roads today. We currently operate in 25 different cities in all the states that you see there. And what we really wanted to do was improve the way the car drives. So again, we're not relying on anybody behind the wheel to take over at any given point in time, but we want the car to actually learn how to experience different climates, different types of road conditions, so the car can continually to improve on the way it's responding, but then also make it comfortable and confident enough for the people who want to ride in the vehicle. So a little bit about our technology. Here the vehicle, if you guys had a chance to see the vehicle in front of the entrance today, this will give you a really good illustration. You're more than welcome to go out to the vehicle to see it. But this is a bird's eye view of what the vehicle looks like. So we have a couple of different systems that we have built and integrated onto the car. And the way we've developed it is to make a whole series of redundancies for the way the car behaves and the way the car sees. So if you look at this illustration, we have the vision system, which is located on top of the vehicle. The vehicle is a camera system up on top, and then we also have a medium and long-range LiDAR-based laser system. We also have a radar system built on each four corners of the vehicle, and a short-range LiDAR system that is built also on the four corners of the vehicle. So all of these systems, the technology that we have on the car is set up to clearly identify everything immediately around the vehicle, but it also gives us the advantage of seeing 365 degrees around the car up to about 3 football fields away. The car also, the thing that we don't have illustrated here is the fact that we have an external microphone system both in the forward area and in the back to alert us for any emergency vehicles such as sirens that might be approaching. So how does the car drive? What drives this technology? The first thing the car needs to know is exactly where it is in relation to everything around it. So by doing that, what our engineers have to do is to actually map the physical locations of the areas that we cruise in. This could be seen as a limitation for self-driving car technology at this point in time, because we basically have to go back and create these hypersensitive and hyper-detailed maps of the roadways we want to cruise. What we need to do is to take into account lane width, curb height, whether or not we have a crosswalk, a dip in the road, a speed bump, etc. So once those maps are built, the car will actually be able to position itself in the roadway to know where it needs to go. The second thing the car needs to know is to be able to classify the objects that it encounters on the road. So up to date, we've classified over 15,000 different types of objects that the car might encounter on the roadway at any given point in time. And with that, the car is able to predict the behavior of everything that it sees around us. So in this illustration here, we see all the lines kind of jeering off into different directions. That's actually the car predicting where it thinks the people in the adjacent road are going to go, where the crosswalk is, do we have pedestrians, and the like. From that, the car is going to be able to determine where it wants to go. So once it decides that it wants to continue to go straight on that path, it's going to continue to keep an eye on everything around it, but it also knows, and it's going to provide you as a user a sense of comfort to know that the car does not plan to take any projected path other than what's being shown in that illustration. So I mentioned we drove 10 million miles on public roads cruising. We also do have a closed course track in Central California where we do structured road testing. So this illustration here shows one of our vehicles working with a person on a bike. So with that, we're looking at gauging how the car reacts and drives in different types of temperature settings. Maybe it's extreme heat, extreme snow or ice conditions, wind. All those things are factored in our closed course testing. So this illustration here is a picture here in Phoenix where we actually have our car encountering chickens crossing the road. You wouldn't think that our cars would be able to stop for it, but it actually does. So let's see if this video works. Aaron, can you come put this over by the laptop? I think it's might be why it's streaming slowly. All right. So, one of the big questions that we get as a car driving company is whether or not our cars will stop and react to anything and everything on the roadway. And with all the knowledge that we have with the vehicles and what it's able to classify, the car actually does identify the objects crossing and moving in front of us as live animals, albeit a small animal. So what we see is the fence there that pops up, so the car knows that it can't proceed past that fence that populates because we do have the chickens that are crossing along the roadway there. This is another picture here, and if you look at it, if you look at the little photo at the bottom left there, you can't actually see anything or anyone. Now what's great about having the redundant technology built into the car is the fact that the little yellow box on our right is actually a pedestrian that crossed the roadway. A lot of us have limitations when we're driving at night, but the car can actually continue to see with the LiDAR and the radar sensors built into the vehicle, so it can actually pick up pedestrians like this in the middle of the night. I'm sorry, guys, the technology's not working.
Internet's not good in this room.
No, I have it.
Everyone that tries to run videos
Really?
has trouble.
Bill Gates is jealous of you guys.
So this here is a blown up picture, a blown up photo of what that car actually could see, and you can barely make out a pedestrian there that is walking on the roadway. So one of the things that I haven't really talked about here with our self-driving car system is the fact that the state of Arizona, Phoenix, and Chandler, where we call home, has been really welcoming in terms of working with us, partnering with us, and allowing us to test on public roadways here in the state. Part of that cooperative relationship and partnership is the fact that we have a lot of local cities that have helped us develop this technology. The Chandler Police Department and Fire Department have been very instrumental in helping us develop our emergency response training that we have located on our website. And what that does is provide a guideline for first responders to come out and interact with our vehicles. So in the event that the car does get in an accident, we have trained our local first responders on how to work with the cars. It might be a little disconcerting to come up to an accident and pull up and want to talk to the driver when you have no driver in the car. So what we've done is we've actually worked with a lot of the local agents here to train them on where they need to find the information for registration and insurance, how they need to get into, how they can get in touch with a lot of our local agents who can respond to them online and in the vehicle. But more importantly, if the car, with all this self-driving car technology built on top of it, where do I need to cut if I need to extract somebody from the vehicle? So all this information has been placed online, but more importantly, we are working to train a lot of our local agencies on how to interact with our cars. Another thing that we're required to do with California in particular is to provide information on how well our cars are driving. So we have the safety report, which we actually have available back there, that we put out every year online to talk a little bit more about our rates of disengages. A lot of times people want to know how often we might have to take over control of the car. But we also do provide validation methods on what we've done to the car, what kind of vehicles we use, and how we integrate the self-driving car system into that. So the safety report is something that we always refer people to. Now, in 2016, we actually invited members of the public in the East Valley to participate in our early rider program. If you wanted to help us test the technology, you could go online, you could sign up, you go through a vetting process, and you could actually use the cars free of charge as an early rider. So we started this program in 2016. We've had families from all different backgrounds and all different needs participate. And what was really unique about having them get involved in our car testing program was that they were able to maybe kind of fine-tune the way the cars were driving. Sometimes, initially when I started off as a test driver, the car had a little bit of a robotic feeling to it. A lot of times we do a little random brake jabs or kind of juke around a little bit. But as a driver, as Aaron and Martin can probably attest to, is a lot of times you get used to the way the car drives. You don't start to notice those little things when you're sitting in the cars for 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. So by getting early riders to participate with us and ride with us, they were able to help us fine-tune and iron out some of the little robotic feelings that you might experience in the car. And with that, they also helped us integrate this screen system that we see back here. And it's a really simplified version of what you might actually see in the illustration with the cars with all the cool graphics and everything. But what this illustrates is a more simplified version of what the car is seeing, but it also helps give you some comfort as a passenger on what the car is seeing and why it's stopping and why it's reacting and responsive for certain things. And this was very important, and this is really critical feedback that the early riders have been able to provide to us since participating in the program in 2016. Now, I mentioned a little bit about our partnerships with local officials, local cities, local law enforcement. The other thing that we really want to do as a car riding service is to be able to partner up with existing public transportation needs that are out there. What we'd like to do is not necessarily become a disruptor, but rather become an enabler. We have a lot of folks who don't live directly on a bus route or on a light rail route that need to use and rely on that transportation to get to and from work or to and from their errands. So what we did was we actually partnered up with the Valley Metro to do a 2-year study on how self-driving cars, how Waymo can get involved to kind of help connect from first mile, last mile needs of the public. With that, we also are examining and looking at accessibility needs for people who might not want to drive or not be able to drive. How can we make this technology more accessible, but then also how do we integrate it into existing public transit systems? So that's one thing that we're doing right now with Valley Metro. Now in 2018, in December of 2018, we actually launched a service called Waymo One. Now this service is available to all members of the public in the East Valley. Right now we're small scale because we don't want to just have everybody, crash our system. But Waymo One is a self-driving ride-hailing service. So similar to a Lyft or an Uber, you can actually go and download the application, and you can actually use it to hail to and from the movies, the restaurants, if you want to use it to get to work. This service is available, like I said, in the East Valley. It's limited in area at this point, but our goal is eventually to get all throughout the Phoenix Valley area. So when we're looking at what self-driving car technology can do, we do want to fit and complement the existing public road systems out there, but we also want to be able to provide this service to everybody. So when we're talking about self-driving cars, how are we going to do that? Well, we want to be able to fit in, not necessarily be a burden on congestion. We want to make sure that this vehicle is available and accessible to everyone on the roadways. Just in closing, just very thankful that you guys had us here. Aaron, Martin, and I are all here and available to answer any kind of questions that you might have. We do have the vehicle on display outside, so as you're making your way out, we'll be outside of and can go over a little bit in detail of what you guys might see on the car. Okay.
So if your law enforcement then call you folks and say, you know what, I want to see your data. It had nothing to do with the car accident, but I think that your car picked up visual data that would help in a law enforcement investigation. Have you had any situations where it was used like that?
Currently, we just use it for the self-driving car application. We are aware, now, since we are a Google or an Alphabet
Behind
company,
every giant
we
leap.
are very much concerned about privacy of both the people who ride in our car, but also the people who might encounter our vehicles. So we don't have any plans to make that information available. Now, because we are interacting with public safety, there are from time to time where our cars might be involved in an accident. And with that, we are working cooperatively with local law enforcement agencies on how they can retrieve that data if need be in an active investigation. I think most of the time we've interacted with public safety, it has been in the event that our cars might have been involved in an accident, such as a rear ending. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't necessarily put the stops on not helping to contribute to something like that in the event of a crime. We have a legal team that does look at these kinds of situations on a case-by-case basis. And if it does in fact come up, then we do have a process involved to where law enforcement can reach out for us to retrieve those tapes.
So now we're taking I do a lot of driving. I'm on the road 6 hours a day minimum, and I'm serious, I do a lot of driving. You're taking out the equation of distracted driving. Is this going to lower my interest rates for my insurance rates to offset? Obviously, the car's going to cost a little bit more money. So, will I see a reduction in my insurance, or we don't know?
That is a good question, and that's something that we have been looking at addressing. One of the big questions that we have too is if I'm going to be using this as a ride-hailing service, am I actually going to be insured while I'm riding in the vehicle? This is where our partnerships with local companies has been very helpful and very beneficial. We partnered with Lyft, we partnered with an insurance company, so we make sure that you as a rider are fully insured when you're on your trip. For something like that, if we're talking long-term where Waymo might actually produce a self-driving vehicle that you as a personal driver could purchase, then that would be something that we would want to address at that time.
You referenced 10 million miles in learning. I've seen some literature that calls Waymo the smartest driver on Earth. Does that mean that all those 10 million miles, that those algorithms and those instructions are available to every Waymo driverless car?
Yes. So the car is learning. So, we might encounter a situation. I think one good illustration that I have that comes to mind is when I started off as a driver out here in Chandler, our cars were very reactive to empty plastic bags that would float across the roadway. So as a driver, I would normally, expect not to react to that type of object crossing, but the car had to learn how to respond and how not to respond to those types of objects. It could actually learn to filter out that this is a soft object, the car is not going to get injured, or the car's not going to crash if we hit the plastic bag. So all those types of scenarios that we go through, the car is continually learning. But with that, we're always improving the software iterations. So once the car gets that, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 miles of learning how to correctly react to those types of objects, that kind of information is built in and passed on to the rest of the fleet. So now I think from the 2.5 years since I've been in the car definitely knows it doesn't need to react to those types of objects. So the car and the software is constantly learning. And internally, we're also looking at how to improve the hardware. So we've gone through several generations of improving the LiDAR sensors on the car, for instance. How do we make them more robust? How do we make them a little sharper and a little clearer? So that's also something we're continually working on improving.
So the chickens and the kitty cats and all are safe, right?
Yes, they are,
All right.
even the chipmunks.
Thank you.
Thank you for your commitment. I, too, lost an 18-year-old sister to a drunk driver, and I am really anticipating the day when people aren't able to do that anymore. Do you have handicapped accessible vehicles? Because it would be great for them. Question number one, and how soon will they be available? Will we be purchasing these for ourselves, or will we be always calling you for a ride?
Okay, thank you for your questions. So right now with the Valley Metro partnership that we have currently going on, we are exploring handicap wheelchair accessibility that we want to get in the vehicles. Currently, we do not have any wheelchair accessible vehicles on our fleet. If you get a chance to look at the vehicles, we actually have Braille that's written up on the controls in the back for our visually impaired folks. And with the early riders, we are looking at testing the service to accommodate a lot of the handicaps that people might experience, such as hearing impaired, visually impaired. The wheelchair accessibility is a big concern because in addition to having the self-driving car hardware built on the vehicle, you're also having to modify the vehicle for a wheelchair lift. So that is something that we're currently exploring with the Valley Metro partnership. And then your second question was? Yes. Okay, so part of Waymo, initially what we really wanted to do was to get this ride-hailing service out to members of the public. So with that, we want everybody to have the Waymo car experience where you actually get to use it as a service. We find a lot of millennials don't actually want to own a car. They don't want to pay for the car payment. They don't want to have insurance. So this is a really nice, affordable alternative to getting around town. One thing I didn't touch on in our video is the fact that we actually have 2 autonomous semi-trucks that we're currently testing. We tested in the Atlanta, Georgia area. They're currently in Mountain View, California, where our headquarters are, and they have tested here in Phoenix. That is another component and another part of our mission for wanting to move things safely around. We are exploring the idea of personal car ownership. It could be some time because obviously the cost for the laser systems, the LiDAR systems that we build in-house is tremendous. So that is something that we might potentially want to get into. It's not going to be anytime soon, but that is certainly an area that we do want to explore.
What is your ultimate objective? Is it to manufacture cars, to buy cars and lease them, to buy cars and let people use them for certain things and pay a price? Mm-hmm. And when do you expect to make money?
Good question. Yes. So with the rollout of the rideshare service, we definitely do want to get people comfortable with the technology. I understand that it is a little alarming when you're riding in the car for the first time to realize that the wheel is doing all the moving and all the pedals are in control, and we're not expecting you as a passenger to be able to take over control at any time. So this obviously is something that people have to get used to on the roadways. Imagine it when back in the old days people would get around with horse and wagon, and then we had the cars introduced like the Model Ts. There's a little bit of confusion about maybe who got the right of way in terms of the car or the horse. It's something similar to that where we really have to be able to introduce this technology slowly and gradually. We want people to understand how the car sees and how the car behaves, but more importantly, how do you as a current driver know how to react with the car? So that's part of the learning and part of the testing process that we're doing now. And like I mentioned earlier, we're looking at autonomous car trucking for moving goods from place to place. If and when there is a demand for self-driving cars, fully self-driving cars, to be available to the public, then we will certainly explore that. It's certainly going to be something that we would want to get involved in.
Hi.
Hi.
So in the work that I do, we transport families across the valley in 15-passenger vans. One of the greatest concerns I have every day is that there's going to be an accident, and it's most likely going to be human error. How far do you see down the road the possibility of autonomous vehicles that could handle maybe 14, 15 passengers or something like that? Or is that even something you're looking at on the horizon?
No, I think we are definitely open for any and all suggestions. One thing I didn't mention, and I probably should have, was the fact that we have a Let's Talk Self-Driving Car campaign going on right now with members of the Phoenix area, where we've been partnering up with MAD, we've been partnering up with the Foundation for Senior Living, the Foundation for Blind Children, into looking at how we might be able to contribute and get involved with the technology and have that integrated into what we want to do. So one thing that we've learned over time is that our self-driving system is very robust and can be easily applied to other vehicle platforms. So that's part of the excitement, is once we move to the Jaguar, what other vehicles might and what other partnerships might we have in place to do something like a 15-passenger van, like a pickup truck. So if you wanted to do a car pickup over at Home Depot, for example, you need some 2x4s, you could actually have a car available to make that purchase for you and to drive that kind of cargo home without you having to rent a truck or you having to borrow a friend's truck. So we are exploring those types of possibilities.
So is it out of the question that if you have, for example, your vans that you're using now, the Pacifica?
Yes.
That an organization like ours could use 2 Pacificas to achieve the same objective even today? Is that possible?
Yeah, we have a partnerships team that actually reaches out to local groups, schools, and have a really candid conversation about how can this technology impact you. With the city of Chandler in particular, we have a downtown Chandler business partnership group that we've worked with and that we've partnered with, where we actually offer subsidized rides for our membership to ride to downtown Chandler, where they get a certain percentage off if they go to the movies or go to dinner. So those types of partnerships are things that we're actively seeking, and we really do want to know how we might be able to best complement your organization.
Thank you.
I want to talk a little bit about the business because it's fascinating. You're not the only one doing this. How many people are actually trying to do the same thing you're doing? Are you doing something a little different or taking a different approach than the others? Will this evolve into a wide range of businesses, or is this a winner-take-all proposition?
Thank you for the question. There are actually a number of self-driving car companies here in Arizona. Too Simple is an autonomous trucking operation that operates outside of Phoenix. Local Motors is actually based in Chandler, that has Ollie the trolley that kind of has that shuttle type service available in a limited area. With the governor's support and with his executive order to have autonomous vehicle testing available here in Arizona, has done and lent a lot to other tech companies coming into Arizona to do their autonomous vehicle testing. So we certainly are aware there are competitors out there. I think what sets us apart is the fact that we've been around for 10 years. Over 10 million miles of public roads testing is no small feat. One thing that we like to do too as part of our testing process is to run a lot of scenarios in simulation. So if our car encounters something that it might not otherwise know how to respond to, we have engineers who go back and replay those same scenarios over again in all sorts of different environments. And we generally run, anytime we have a disengage, a problem with the car, maybe the driver wasn't feeling comfortable at an unprotected left-hand turn, the cars and the drivers and the engineers all kind of work together on how we can work to fix that. Now, with all the competitors out there, there are certainly different types of areas that each could decide to move into. I think Neuro is one of the autonomous vehicle companies that comes to mind in the South Scottsdale area, where they currently offer a grocery delivery service. to their customers. And that is something that maybe we haven't exactly explored. We had a small partnership, but it's not nothing that we're actively exploring right now. I think there's a lot of possibilities and potential applications of this self-driving car technology that could be applied in many different ways. So, you know, it's kind of an open field on how people want to best use this kind of technology in their lives and in everyday work.
Thank you very much. One of our traditions here is each guest speaker gets a certificate of thanks, basically, for being here and giving us a little part of your time. And in part of this, actually, this Family Promise, I believe, is the recipient. That is the agency you just heard from. We make a donation in your name. And in this case, the family. He'll use it to buy one of the vans when they're.
Great. Very good.
Thank you,
Thank you
Dezbah.
so much.